Rob Alberino, thanks so much for jumping on the podcast, mate. It's fantastic to have someone of your caliber on the show. And I've just given you a little bit of a career rundown in the intro there, but and so let's get straight into it. Can you tell me why video is such a powerful tool for storytelling? Let's just get into it, mate.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's funny. There's an old adage in America, right? Like a picture's worth 1,000 words. I always say video's worth 1,000,000. And you know, the thought process of being able to evoke emotion with a soundtrack and incredible visuals. I don't know if there's anything more powerful, especially in the sports world, in the entertainment world. And I think that I often tell my team, look, you are delivering folks what they're asking for, what they live for, what they spend their hard-earned money on. And you're basically adults doing arts and crafts, right? You get to, your work gets tangible and gets delivered. And if it's good, people will consume it constantly. And they will at times maybe save it on a favorites list and go back to it. I know I do that same thing. So it's the ultimate medium, in my opinion.
All right, we're going to get into the deep dive part of the pod here, where we're talking about sort of the data that sits behind the decisions you make and the art and the science here. And we glazed over it, but let's get into it. I know you've got a very repeatable process that you go through with your team to come up with an idea, and I'd love to go into a bit of detail about this around those 4 steps that you go through every single time.
All right. So, if you've already noticed, and you and I have spent a little bit of time together, that I like to use my hands, right? As an Italian, love to use my hands. So I'm going to draw a chart that I want all of you folks out there to kind of think in your mind. It's actually right here. Okay. But I'm going to show it when we're done. So inclusiveness is super, super important. Having those superpowers column that we talked about, having everybody on the team work. It starts out in the top box right here. And that first box is just ideas. Getting in that room, sitting down, talking about ideas. What are some cool things that we can do? How can we do them? How can we achieve them? Nothing is out of bounds. Don't be bound by technology. Don't be bound by money. Don't be bound by timing. Just give me some ideas. The ideas then trickle into, we found some things we love. Now we're going to go execute them. So my team goes and execute those. We got 25 content creators. Off we go. Then it goes into distribution, which is basically another word for our channels. Twitter, IG, TikTok, etc., .com, YouTube. So once we get to that point where distribution and they go out to the world, we then measure it. And if that measurement comes back, we know what we're doing. We know if it's hitting the point, if it's doing what it's supposed to be doing, then hopefully it heads back to ideation. We take what we love and we continue it on that move, and we take what didn't work and we get rid of it. Back about 10 minutes ago when you and I talked about a one-man band, before I was the focus group of one, which I don't really want to be. Now I'm a true focus group. Again, we have immediate measurement with all these incredible tools that we have now. With it, we have staff who their job is simply to measure this stuff, dig in. How long did people watch? When did they stop watching? Was there a point where they really were engaged? And again, going back to my little nerdy thing for everybody, that's it. It might be backwards in your world, but literally it's ideas, right? Execution, distribution, measurement, and off we go again. And that little circle of life, I could play that Disney music if you want, but that little circle of life is kind of what keeps us, flowing. And this is the simple thing. If you walk away from this and you're a content creator, let the numbers guide you. Let the numbers be the beacon, because that beacon, yes, your gut has to tell you this is a great story. Yes, your gut has to say, hey, me and Callum have this great idea. We're going to kick its ass. It's going to be amazing. However, when you're done, measure it. Did all the things that we believed when we sat down at a table, did they come to fruition, or did it kind of fall flat on its face? What could you do better? Be your biggest critic and ask those questions, because don't let pride get in the way of a good product.
For sure. So let's I love that theory, the theoretical aspect of that, and that works really well. I'd love to hear an example of where you created something, went through the process, it worked, and therefore you created something else that was similar or slightly adjusted or in a different format, length, or whatever it is. Could you take us into that?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's some interesting things. Actually, there's there's both sides of the scale, right? Things that we thought were going to be amazing that flopped or just didn't perform as well. It's tough to say that they flopped because we have a, and again, this isn't a rub your ears moment, but we have an unbelievable fan base that really consumes well. And when I was in San Francisco for 8 years, we had an absolutely pathological group of fans that just ate everything we gave them, and they were fabulous. And I think most NFL fans are ravenous for that food, right? For that daily insight into their team. But we have a long form show that's pretty incredible. It's called The Franchise. If you get a chance to watch it, last year we had the maximum episodes. We had 14 episodes. If you're familiar with Hard Knocks, if you're familiar with F1 Drive to Survive, it's that same ilk. Amazing interviews, super in-depth, incredible access. And it's a biased look at the Kansas City Chiefs. Episode 14 last year for the Super Bowl was about an hour long, and it was like our most engaged episode, I think, ever. To your point, all year long, actually the first year that I got here in 2021, I had been a huge fan of this team since I was here. I went to the Niners and then I came back. So I've always been a fan of this team, and I've been watching what they were doing, and I loved what they were doing. But I asked them I asked that the core team of the franchise, getting to your point, do we need to make it long for the sake of making it long? Or if you deliver 8 ounces of filet mignon to people, they will eat that filet mignon and go away probably not hungry, but hungry for more, right? I don't know what a terrible meat in Australia is, but I can tell you a terrible meat in the United States is called steak-'em, and it's cheap and greasy and gross. And if you gave me 8 pounds of steak-'em versus 8 ounces of filet mignon, I'm going to take the filet mignon every single day. If you gave me 8 ounces of steak-'em in a half an hour, I'd be sick to my stomach, and I'd probably be where you think I'm going to be. Deliver filet mignon every day. So let's get tighter and better and make them watch it and be like, my God, that happened really quickly. Maybe it was only 18 minutes, but it felt like 6. And so we measured the point of where people were either picking up or dropping off. And it turned out that the average view was something like, and this will certainly surprise you and your team, Callum, was like 16 minutes, which is incredible because the average view of a video in America is like 7 seconds. And you can check that, but I believe that's because kids are just like whipping through this stuff. We had such insane engagement, Callum. It was unbelievable. So taking that method, right, my little ecosystem, and measuring it and really figuring out where things spiked. And so we found that people really enjoyed that we had real music, commercial music. We had the likes of, Tech-9 and Greta Van Fleet, and we would pay for this music to kind of add validity to the music and to the soundtrack. And it was just amazing. It just took on this new life. And then by measuring it, we were really saying like, wow, we're doing the right thing. Now, I will talk out of both sides of my mouth and say the Super Bowl version was like an hour and, 15 minutes or some unbelievable length of time. And it was still engaged like through the roof. It was incredible. So we conditioned our audience to understand that we're going to deliver, this A+ stuff all the way through. And it was a really good, you go into the lab, you figure out if it works, and then, oh my gosh, it worked. It was a great example to your point.
Interesting. So how do you break down some of these segments of audience? So you sort of mentioned that I love that stat around the 8 to 10-year-old. And these days they do have a phone in their hands. And so, and that's just, which is crazy. Yeah. That's one. But do you really sort of go, oh, look, we'll come up with this idea, and who's this really for? And how deep do you get into the personas, and how do you make sure, because you might be, the strategy might be to double down on one this season, on one audience. You go, we're really going to, nail the super fans aged, 30 to 40 or to 20, whatever it is. As opposed to, more looking at a broader one and make sure you cater for various ones, which, video, there's long form, there's short form, it's on different devices, on different platforms, there's heaps that goes into it. How does that work? What decisions do you make there?
So I just realized after talking to you, and I don't know if this is just me being like hyper aware, but I make a lot of food references, right? I make a lot of food references so this is going to be the podcast of food references. I think, the Engage team will be like, Jesus, how many food references can you make? But Here's another one. Like the content that we put out is a buffet, right? And when you go to a buffet, have you ever gone to a buffet? Do you like buffets?
Yeah. Only good ones though. A bad one's really bad. But a good
the bad ones
good,
are bad. I'm gonna give you and the team a tip. Next time you're in Las Vegas, go to the Wynn Buffet at the Wynn Hotel. Oh, it's the bomb. You'll love it, and your Engage team you'll thank me for it. He's writing it down. I love that. So when you go to a buffet, right now it's like a $70 buffet, but it's totally worth it. So when you go to a buffet, you know that you're going to want like soup and salad, but then you're going to want seafood and you're going to want some steak and you're going to want this and you're going to want that. That's exactly what our content is. Our content is this cross section to feed everyone. And absolutely, to answer you directly, yes, we are cutting for specific audiences. And so when those people come to the buffet, they're going to say like, I'm really looking for this. They can find it. So we have a more youthful engagement in TikTok. We actually have the #1 TikTok in the NFL. And when I tell you that the next team isn't even close in the rearview mirror, and that is an absolute flex on the girls and guys who work on the team. It's unbelievable. Like, I think we're 7 figures over the next following team. So you can go figure out who that is, but we're kicking their butt left and right. And I don't have anything to do with that. Those guys down there are just murdering it. So that is a very specific audience. You know what I mean? Rob Alberino is not looking at that. You know, my wife is not looking at that, but my 14-year-old daughter is, right? And my 20-year-old daughter is, but my 27-year-old son, maybe not. And I think one of the keys that we do is we want to engage and we want to connect properly with the right audiences, but have the same message. And that same message is honor our legacy, connect with the community. You know, it's all of these pillars that we have. And at the same time, we just want to deliver it in the way that people want to consume it. So we know that we do have people who really enjoy that long form storytelling. And a lot of teams, if I'm being very honest, have totally abandoned long form storytelling, And because it's difficult to do, Callum, it's really expensive to do. And unless you're doing it properly with talented human beings, it's probably a lousy watch. And I am a long form storyteller. I have some fabulous long form storytellers. That is a hunk of our business. And then we've got mid form, which I don't think we did a great job for years and years. And that was one of the big things that I brought here was, look, we really got to attack 2 to 8 minutes and maybe we're going to deal with lifestyle. Maybe we're going to deal with fashion. Maybe we're going to deal with music. Maybe we're going to deal with comedy. And so those are hitting these different sectors that we want to hit. And then anything 2 minutes or lower, anything we're cranking on social, those quick bites, those snackable moments, those fun pieces, TikTok-esque stuff, we're tackling that for other people. But if you actually get down to it and you put all those together on a level playing field, they're all produced with the same amount of love, the same amount of care, the same cameras, the same thought process. They all sort of go through the same filter of chiefdom to make sure that when you look at it, you're like, okay, 65 Toss Power Trap Productions, that's our production arm. 65 TPT, they did that. There's no doubt in my mind that there's a certain level of quality that you're going to get. It just doesn't matter if you're 8 or if you're 80.
Interesting. So it felt like we were racing towards 1 second videos for a while there until we started some of these docus sort of coming out, the fly on the wall style documents. So thank God. I mean, it was getting crazy, and you probably would have been seeing that in some of the numbers. So it's kind of, for me, it's kind of safe storytelling in a lot of ways. And from a cross-functional team perspective, you said you got your production arm. How do you work with other areas? I mean, if you guys just like, it reminds me of Saturday Night Live, they got their writer's room. I feel like there's lots of, cans of Red Bull and pizza, and they just, throw funny stuff on the wall. And it sounds like you do that anyway. But how do you work with other areas of the business, particularly those that might be, have all the information, the data, the analytics, the marketing space, and you'll have your own figures as well, of course. But how do you work with them to make sure you're not just working in a silo or a bubble? What's that process?
Yeah. Again, this isn't a PSA to come work for the Chiefs, but I will tell you the culture here is unbelievable. And, hopefully someday you'll come to Arrowhead. You have this is my full invitation for you and your team. Get to Arrowhead and you won't have to pay for a ticket or parking. We got you covered and you'll be able to see it. But we got to get you some red on. That black shirt's not going to cut it. We'll get you some red. But the culture here is unbelievable, and you would see it. You would see it when you hit the ground, because it sort of has taken on the DNA of the community. It's like a really familiar, civic-minded community. There's a lot of sharing. Kansas City is like a very open, kind of colloquial place. There are no walls here. The only time I shut my door is when I'm doing a podcast for my Engage peeps, or when I'm on the phone with my mom telling her about the next best thing I'm going to cook when she comes and visits me. But everybody's kind of flowing and talking, and our marketing department trickles down and butts right up against our sales team. And that butts right up against our community and our public relations team. And we're all talking. And I think the nice thing is exactly what you said. We call those silos of excellence. When you think you're really good and you don't want to talk to anybody, you're a silo of excellence. It's sort of a sarcastic way to say you're a jerk. But the silos of excellence don't exist here, right? So there are no walls. And I mean, I had a guy who was a ticket sales guy who has a little headset on with the little, the little Call of Duty microphone. He literally walked in here just like a few days ago and pitched me an idea in the parking lot. He's like, "Hey, I got this idea. You should think about this." I love that. Bring every crazy idea into my room that you have, because who knows what's going to fall out of somebody's pocket, right? And so, we work with the sales folks who are desperately trying. It's a business. We're trying to make money too. They have these incredible partners. These partners have stories that might have a really good connect. You never know where these stories come from. And the other thing is, what a lot of people don't know is, you ever see those chess boards that have like 3 levels? You can play chess, like 3-dimensional chess. It's like next level stuff. We're working with our brand in that same thought process. If we're doing this, how does it affect our brand? Can it be sold? Are we telling the right stories? Like, there's never just one size fits all for us. It's a very, very interesting piece. If we're trying to tell a story and it's something about our history or something about our present, how do we tell that so that it's not just a one-off? A great example of that is, we worked with an artist, this local rapper who's worldwide. His name's Tech9. I mentioned him earlier, but we had this guy do an incredible sort of a dark version of "'Twas the Night Before Christmas," the old poem, the old holiday poem, and it became this like animated, amazing thing. But then it turned into a poster series, and then it went into the stadium on the big board. So what was one idea blossomed because of the team into multiple ideas and served a lot of different masters. And I thought that was kind of a neat thing. And that was testament to that ecosystem and that culture of like, hey, what if it did this? Hey, what if we built it to do this? And I just really love that thought process. And the ideas, again, come from sometimes the most interesting of places. So it's a pretty cool piece.
I think it's that shared mission. There's that story of JFK in the 60s going visiting NASA, and he spoke to the janitor, and he asked the janitor, what do you do here? And he's like, "I'm helping put a man on the moon, sir." And it's that shared vision of, everyone's trying to do the same thing regardless of where, any idea is a good idea. We love a meritocracy, and, the best ideas win, and they can come from all sorts of places. So I love that.
Yeah.
I think that's cool.
It's wonderful. Super cool.
What's your relationship with data and maths and analytics as a creative, Rob?
So I can't even begin to tell you literally 2 doors behind me. Again, when you come visit me, you'll see how tight we are. 2 doors behind me, there are kids who are just killing it with numbers. We call them the beautiful mind. And a lot of time I'll see like, "Hey, what's going on with the smart kids today?" And so they're putting things together. It is, again, to go back to what I said, the best thing I could say is I let those things lead me into creating successful stories. And this actually started when I was in the Bay, because, being in San Francisco, you're looking at the epicenter of technology outside of Tokyo. I argue that, the Bay Area, some of the greatest minds, some of the incredible measurement, all the things that you see come out of there. And I was working with some incredible people who helped be able to measure this stuff probably when it wasn't being measured, and using significant tools across the board. Gosh, I mean, I can't even think right now. The piece that comes to mind is just tracking how our stuff is viewed, how our stuff is consumed, lengthwise, time-wise, and what monetizing and figuring out from a return on investment point, how does this stuff actually pay us back? How does it pay our salaries? And working with that team, there is nothing I can throw at them. I mean, sometimes I'm like, give me 10, I've got a speech here or there. Give me 10 gaudy numbers. And he's like, I can give you 50 gaudy numbers. Like, I don't even know where to begin to measure it or how they're measuring it. But I know that at the end of the day, when I get those charts back and we can understand exactly where we're going, it is so valuable. It's as valuable as having the right camera or the right editing system for me. And I think we just added to this team, or you can check our careers page. I believe there'll be we're creating a new position as well for measurement and SEO. So it's pretty exciting stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's all heading that way. And that sounds like a good way to do it. I love the beautiful mind. That's cool. Give them a little brand. Can't help yourself, can you?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Cool. Another piece on the audience. So it's suffice to say that sports getting more and more globalized. And so from your perspective, you've got a very local fan base, and as you said, you sort of pick up the nuances and the character of the city that you live in, and the fans do as well, and that's the character the team takes on and the profile. NFL have been playing a couple of overseas games. I was in London last year, and they played. There's a few games going on there as well, becoming more global. So, what does that change? What you guys create, and well, certainly from a language perspective, if you're creating it for France or, in Spanish or whatever it is, how has that changed? Because that's something that's only going to get bigger, not smaller.
100%. As a matter of fact, interesting note, when I was asked to return here, one of the biggest pieces I wanted to bring was international production. I really wanted to work on international production. I myself am bilingual to a certain degree. I speak very conversationally French, although we don't have France as a territory, but Germany is an international home market for us, as is Mexico City. And so I created and hired a full team just for what we call special projects. Was super blessed to be able to get that on the docket. Hired some super talented director of production and editors. And yes, we are cutting in full German. Yes, we are cutting very exclusive stuff that airs only in Germany and Mexico. And some of those things have actually been so successful on the international ends that we've actually stripped them down and aired a percentage of them here. And it's a kind of a really cool thought process. I never thought, to be honest, even though it's probably shooting myself in the foot, that football is such a complicated sport. It's a very Western sport. It doesn't translate over very well. So the education of the game is very important. However, having a guy like Patrick Mahomes, having really fast-paced, exciting, hard-hitting highlights, those things have become very exciting for the international fan. And we cut very, very differently. We've actually employed agencies overseas and south of the border of us to help us kind of understand how people think, how people consume, what people are interested in. And what we've really learned is, thank God for Patrick Mahomes, because not only is he global, but he's also incredibly willing to work on cool stuff with us. That's been one. We call that the Mahomes effect. And then the other thing is personalities of our players just shine through. And a lot of our guys, we found out, Calum, that I think 4 total guys on our team now speak German, and one of our trainers speaks German, which is like a super cool thing. You would never I would have expected Spanish. I would have, expected potentially French, maybe, but German. And it's really interesting. These guys are connecting. When we need something for the German fans, we go to these guys, and they kind of, work through it. And we've also connected with, the Bayern Munichs. They've been incredible partners of ours, and we're finding new ways to collaborate. It is the most exciting thing for me because A, I absolutely adore Europe, and B, what a fun opportunity, right? When was the last time you were given this product that you've worked on for, again, 29 years, and somebody comes to you and says, okay, guys, here's the scoop. Teach it to another culture, make them fall in love with it, and have a blast doing it. I'm like, okay. So we play in Frankfurt this year on November 5th, and we're super excited. I'll spend 10 days out there, most likely prior to the game, and hanging out with fans, telling stories with my team. And I mean, are you kidding me? Like, life could be worse. It's pretty awesome. So
it's a cool remit, mate. That sounds cool. Really cool. We'll have to get you out. It's a long way to Australia, mate, but maybe that should be on the cards.
I love a long plane. I love a long plane flight. Put me on the plane. Let's do it.
Sounds good. We'll get you out here, mate. So let's we can work backwards now that we've got everyone's attention, because I think that's it's emerging. It's getting bigger and bigger. But let's just take a little step back. You started your career at NFL Films, or at least it was the start of your NFL journey, I suppose. Tell us a little bit about that, because highly decorated is probably an understatement.
Yeah, it's amazing. People ask me, hey, was your family in the business? Was your dad or your mom in the business? My dad was a cook and owned a restaurant. My mom was a secretary. So I wish Steven Spielberg was my father, but he wasn't at the time. So NFL Films is known as sort of the Hollywood of sports, right, Callum, in the United States. And, when I was there, we were physically cutting on Super 16 and using 1959 Moviola flatbeds. It was as old school as it gets, but it was beautiful. It was a beautiful art. And that sort of springboarded the way I think about things. I often reflect on my time back at Films and channel my inner Steve Sable, who Steve Sable was was sort of the godfather of film for football, one of the greatest American storytellers, filmmakers in the sporting industry. And I mean, literally to this day, this week, as a matter of fact, I was like, Steve Sable would have hated this or that. We got to think the way he would have thought back in the day. And I often bring it back. If it weren't for NFL Films, I'm probably not sitting here talking to you. However, because of NFL Films and this is my 29th year in the NFL, I'm unemployable in any other business. So that's it. I can't get a job in any other business. The NFL, it's it. It's NFL or bust for me.
Oh, it could be worse. It could be worse. What a great place! What a great place to be stuck in. That's brilliant.
Yep, that's right. I'll take it.
How's your cooking then? If your dad was a good cook.
Little humble brag. It's damn good. It's damn good. Someday we will connect with each other, and I will show you that the Italians know how to bring things. And so it was an Italian restaurant, of course, and let's put it this way. My wife didn't marry me for this. She married me because I'm multi-talented, but certainly not for this. So, and when I do make sauce for my kids, I usually get a fist pump. Like, who's making sauce tonight? I'm like, I'm making sauce. Yes. So.
Hey, fantastic. We'll have to sort that out one day. I got to get over there. It sounds amazing. I like a good Italian cook-up. Cool. So let's talk about jumping into Team World. So you went from the NFL Films into the Eagles, VP Broadcasting.
Correct.
Tell us a little bit about how that came about and what the gig was there.
Yeah. So super interesting. Back in the day, so I'm going to date myself just a little bit, but back in the day in the late 90s, there were really no in-house production teams. Certainly in pro rugby, in football, in American football, baseball, major league teams didn't have in-house production groups. They really didn't. The very first team, I believe, to bring this together was the Philadelphia Eagles in 1997. And the Cowboys the Dallas Cowboys, this is in North America, of course, were really kind of working on this really innovative look most agencies handled work for teams, and there were private production houses that had cameras that would shoot for teams. It was all outsourced. I had a boss named Len Komorowski, who just recently retired as the president of the Cleveland Cavaliers, the NBA Cavaliers. And he was I can't remember exactly what he was, but I want to assume he was the senior vice president of business for the Eagles at the time. And he hired a young 27-year-old kid to basically he had this vision to start this in-house production team. And he was a genius, true genius and innovator, and he was a good decision maker because he hired me. And he basically said, look, let's get this thing started. Can you pull it off? Can you do live television? Can you do live games? Can you produce 6 games a week? None of which I could do. And I lied right to his face. True story. And I'm like, I can do it. And he took a shot at me. And so I actually sat down at a diner, at a little diner, a little American diner, and had a grilled cheese and fries. And I spent legitimately no less than 3 hours drawing up an entire game plan on napkins. And I had the waiter kept bringing me napkins. And I took these napkins and I basically created a game plan, swear to God, a game plan for in-house production, finally put it into a document, presented it to him. And that was truly the genesis, in my opinion, of in-house production for sports in America. Over the course of 15 years, I rose the ranks of the Birds. I was at the Eagles, the Birds, and rose the ranks there. And a lot of teams, even to this day, come up to me and say, we still use the DNA and the genesis of what you did to create how we create. Whether it's workflow, whether it's structure. I then brought those wares into Kansas City, San Francisco, and so forth.
So we'll just keep on the Italian theme, but you sound like you're the godfather of in-house production, mate. And that
well,
sounds
it's
like
so
you.
funny. It's so funny because I of course I worked with some incredibly smart people, but this, Callum, is back in the day. Like right now, I'll give you an example. Right now, at the Kansas City Chiefs, where I am right now, there's arguably 320 folks in the front office, right? That's everybody. That's from coordinators to CMOs, right? At the Eagles, I want to say there was maybe 16 at the time. So it just shows you the schism of just how far we've come from, one point to the next, I was a one-man wrecking crew at the Eagles and eventually hired a guy, and that grew into, of course, maybe 16 or 17 people. But for years, it was 94 hours a week, 1 or 2 people, renting gear, editing elsewhere. Then we acquired, nonlinear gear and started to work on that. And then, of course, the change into HD. So we sort of watched the evolution of production as we were growing and as we were sort of paving the road. And other teams saw this and followed along. There was a lot of calls, a lot of, how are you doing this? How are you pulling this off? And so it was a really interesting time in the business. This was like early 2000s. And now every team, most NCAA programs, international, have all these things. I'm not saying that we were the very first one, but in North America, I believe we were, which is really a kind of a cool thing.
I'd be interested to know how difficult it was, because sometimes there's something really simple and easy about being a one-man band, and there's something really difficult about it. Obviously, it's hard work, and you have to do everything. But also, you can just make decisions really quickly. You can just get stuff done. You don't have to go through, the loops of feedback and approval and that sort of thing that's shortened. When you've now got a team, and, this happens over time, right? But now all of a sudden you've got a team of, all sorts of different roles. How do you get that? How do you maintain that speed? How do you maintain that cohesion? Because that would have been at the time for you, as you've sort of progressed through your career, quite foreign and new. So how do you manage that?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, that's a great question, and I actually prefer a little bit of democracy and numbers for a few reasons. I mean, I think the women and men that I'm surrounded with now, whether they're physically on my team or in a parallel team, whether it's, digital, social, sales, I love ideas. The best idea in the room is the best idea. That's number one. Two is, I think we'll probably talk a little bit about processes and how we sort of measure things, but what I thought was super important back in the day, or what I thought was the right thing to cut or create back in the day, that was a lot of that was my opinion, right? Hey, I think this is cool. Hey, my small crew thinks this is cool. Let's go and achieve it. Was it necessarily the best thing? I don't know. Right now, we were putting out some great work, and by the way, we were probably putting out some garbage at the same time. I'm probably my biggest critic, and I think having a larger crew, having a broader scale, having people to sort of check and balance things and challenge you a little bit certainly makes your product better. Especially if you surround yourself, which we have, with super talented people, hungry people, visionaries, idea people. I just think that back in the day, I was swinging that axe, again, constantly. And then I was milling the lumber, and then I was building, the furniture with that lumber. It's nice to be able to kind of have people help you on that process. I think you get a better product overall for it. But yeah, we managed to do it then, and now we do it at a much larger scale, a faster rate, but we try to keep that pace alive.
Well, Richard Branson always says that, you should just hire people smarter than you. I think
I didn't want to steal his line. Yeah, that's a hell of a line, because it's true. I mean, I tell people I can't balance my own checkbook. I can't throw a ball, 100 yards, but I can come up with an idea. I can pitch an idea, and everybody sort of has to have their own superpower. And by hiring all these smart people, which is an absolute true statement, if everybody has a different superpower, then you're going to have a really kick butt team. And that's I believe what we've achieved here. And I think we have a lot of coveted people here because of that.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, you had a diverse team. You're just going to get such a richer experience and so many different opinions and the caters for everyone, which leads me into sort of my next question around the media landscape, which is just probably almost unrecognizable from when you started out. And I'd imagine that, well, there's twofold, I suppose. You certainly have to have your finger on the pulse on where it's going, where it's headed. You've got to maintain that. But also, I imagine you've hired some people that know about this sort of thing, and that's that sort of diversity of age and generation and that sort of thing too. So, how's it changed? How have you managed to stay adaptable without trying to answer that for you? But it'd be interested to hear how you've kept up to date.
Yeah, no, you answered the question, so we're good. No, I'm kidding. So the thought process is this. My dad told me something one time, Callum, that I thought was really funny. Every young guy thinks that he can beat his dad, whether it's at a sport or whether you can wrestle him or whatever. And he's always like, "Listen, youthful exuberance will never beat cunning and experience." And I'm like, man, that's a good line. That should be the title of an album, because it's a great line. Youthful exuberance will never beat cunning and experience.
So I'm just writing it down.
So you should write it down. I'll send it to you too. And I think we have a really healthy balance of people who have been in the trenches, who have seen pretty much everything that you can possibly see. And we're getting this incredible influx. And I don't like to put a young or an old on it. I put a veteran and a novice potentially, and maybe a little bit in between there. And some of the novice people that we get on our team who walk in here, without a doubt, are more well-versed probably by the time they step into these walls than we are, because it's inherent to them. It's a natural piece, like understanding, growing up with a phone in your hand, understanding how to navigate things, whether it's an app or whether it's, sort of just the social landscape is much different than the way, I grew up. So consuming and creating, we really need those newcomers to teach us. I learn more from my novice employees than I do from my vets. However, my vets deliver really, really good experience and technical, filmmaking, composition. They understand how to work that. Whereas the crew that is literally walking out of college or maybe is on their second job, they deliver some of the best ideas that we've ever been around. And those ideas are also customed to create content for people in their wheelhouse. And that's really important for us. We just don't want to create for the ardent fans, or we don't want to create for, the 35 and older. I mean, we want to capture these fans when they're young. It's an interesting thing. And I wonder how it is for rugby or for football in your area. But I think there's a statistic that in America, I'm going to try to get this right so I don't screw it up if you fact check me, 88% of kids between the ages of 8 and 10 who fall in love with any team. I don't care if it's a Premier League team, if it's an NFL team, NBA, 88% stick with that team through adulthood because of something that, connected them, whether it's a piece of video, whether it's a hat that they got from their grandma, whether it's a coat or a notebook or a pencil. They really get connected through these things. So our job is to create a connection, and a 53-year-old guy is not going to connect as well as an incredible 21-year-old, 22-year-old producer who maybe just lived that life, a few years ago. So it's a really interesting dynamic, bringing in, just some sort of like youth injection and kind of pairing it with that experienced team.
I think they cover each other as well, right? The vets, they won't make many mistakes because, they're vets. They've already made them all, and they only do it once or twice. And then the younger ones come in and they push it forward. They think of something new or something fresh, and they know the audience inside out because they might be the audience themselves. So yeah, I think that's a great blend. And then I suppose when you've got, now that it's really interesting to hear how the team dynamics set up. You guys just won a Super Bowl. Well done. Amazing achievement. How do you make sure you do this justice? I mean, it's the contents, is just there, the stories, that come out of, the winning a Super Bowl is just all over the place. What are you trying to do straight afterwards? You've been capturing stuff anyway, all the way throughout. What are the goals following that after such a huge achievement?
So before we get there, I just have to show you my favorite picture of all time. So it's that one right there. So I think I might have been the 48th dude to kiss that thing after it was brought to the podium, but I was waiting for that picture for a little long, about maybe 10,600 days, I think, to put a fine point on it. But to answer your question directly, right after that day, moments after winning that Super Bowl, we really started to begin on what the heck are we going to do next, right? What is the next step? And, of course, there's more steps. You win, you party, it's amazing. There's a parade, but then what, right? How do you capitalize off of that? That's a heck of a question, because what's interesting, and I think we talked about this when you and I connected, just a few days back. What I didn't realize and I speak for anybody who's gotten to the top of the mountain and was the last team standing, by virtue of being that last team standing, you have now, I don't want to say this because it sounds cocky, but we've lost 3 months of time when other teams, those ones who didn't make it to the top of the mountain, have already switched over to that next season, right? Well, we played all these extra weeks, and let me caveat that by saying, I hope it happens every single year. Okay. But we've lost all this time, right? So you get a chance to maybe breathe for a second, you take a week off, and you get your butt right back in the seat, and you start to jam. You start to jam on ideas of how you carry on to the next year. Are you reviewing, for a lengthy amount of time that you're on the top of the mountain, or are you previewing where you're headed? And so we're really thinking about that now. What is the story? And frankly, we don't want to dwell on raising that trophy. We are dwelling on preparation, getting set, defending the championship. And, we sit in rooms, probably like you and your incredible team do, right on the other side of this wall. We have a big conference room, and we sit down and we kick back and throw out ideas. We have a ton of brainstorming that we do. The NFL is very cyclical. It has big beats, like April is draft, May is, off-season training. Then we have training camp, and then we have preseason, regular season, postseason. Hopefully you win the Super Bowl, and then you go do it all over again. So we sort of game plan for these little peaks and valleys. And based on that, we extrapolate our content over the course of the year. We're planning deep into, honestly, December, January, as of right now, which is crazy. And we haven't even played the players are out on the field practicing and catching up on that lost time. And, off we go from an iteration standpoint, and how do we deliver content, to a world-class fan base.
Amazing. Yeah. The preparation's enormous, and it's always like, I suppose you never really know, because So what I'm trying to say is you never really know what you're missing out on. I suppose it's all about missed opportunity. You could create a bunch of stuff and some things work and some things don't. But if you don't get in that room and get in that brainstorming room, you might not come up with the idea. And that might not be evident by, you guys just churning on month by month and putting stuff out. But the things you might miss out on by not going through that process, is what you're worried about the whole time, I suppose. And, what are the things? And you've got the most marketable player in the NFL as well in Patrick Mahomes and, the face of the league. Is it difficult not to just go, oh, let's just use him for almost everything? Or how do you balance just using his face and, his marketability, because he will get, and and we're going to get into the data and the analytics behind the decisions you make in that whiteboard room, to just get max clicks, and just chase the clicks, chase the eyeballs, which he'll probably get, but you don't want to get too repetitive. What's the process there?
Yeah, I'm smiling because it's almost like I want your viewers, who I hope they're watching, and thanks for watching this far. If you've gotten this far, that you're probably right on the other side of this camera. This is all BS. You're probably right on the other side of this camera, because we talk about that all the time. You got 53 guys, right? And then of course we've got a cheer team. We've got a flag running team. We've got amazing executives, coaches. So I think, as much as I do, and I am a Patrick Mahomes junkie, I am a fan of Patrick Mahomes, but also I'm an evangelist for what he does for this team. But we got 52 other guys on this team, as well as all these ancillary pieces that are honestly just as or more exciting than Patrick is, and he is fabulous. But we've got guys who have stories on top of stories. We've got young guys who have hard luck stories, who came up tough. We have guys who grew up in the country, guys who grew up in the city. And when we take that helmet off, which is actually, Callum, the biggest challenge that I think we have is, if you're playing rugby, if you're playing soccer or football, if you're playing American football, like, you've got something in front of your face all the time. For us to really get to know our guys, we got to go under that helmet. And telling those stories about those guys has been one of my favorite things. And the nice thing about those stories is they're evergreen. They don't really deal with the scoreboard, right? I mean, please let us be 17-0 every year. However, I've been with some teams that were unwatchable. However, the players were still incredibly lovable, and those stories are what get you through. And if those stories can still remain, back to your original point with Patrick, I got 52 guys with great stories to tell. And if they're willing to tell them, we've got cameras and we've got producers and writers who are just pining to tell those stories to the kingdom. So yeah, we want to use Pat when we can, but man, oh man, you fall in love with some of these guys here. And it's funny. I think this was interesting. I was just telling somebody about this today. Unlike, the Premier League, our guys, we eat with them, we live with them, we travel with them. They literally walk by our door, knock on our door and stick their head in, and we see them at lunch and we see them in the elevators. And there's not really a disconnect between us. Our access is incredible. Thanks to the Hunts, thanks to Mark Donovan, our president, CMO, Laura Krug. They allow us to do some really great things. That access, man, let me tell you something. That's the ultimate decider of good content, or, and if a guy lets us into his life and into his house, it doesn't matter if it's not Patrick Mahomes. People are going to eat it up if we do a good job, right? Or I hope.
Yeah, for sure. It's a nice luxury for you guys.
Yeah.
Right, we've come to the hot takes part of the show, which is the end. So there's some spicy stuff here, Rob. So, I hope you're ready, mate. But here we go. And we have talked about some of this stuff, so I might know roughly what you might think. But let's get some sort of short burst answers from you. But here we go. Long form sports content is dead.
Disagree completely, because you haven't watched Chief stuff if you think that's the case.
100%. Teams should focus on engaging younger fans over older ones.
I don't necessarily disagree with that, although I would then ask everybody under 30 to stop having such a damn short attention span, because if we could maybe serve both at the same time. I blame all you under 30 people for that.
Yeah, I know. Kate, one of our producers, is listening to this and probably nodding and smiling.
I blame her.
Yeah, me too. All the time. Right, number 3. social pages will replace websites for teams from a content perspective.
I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree with that. 10 years ago, if you told me that TV was going to be dead, I probably, with the exception of live sports, I probably would have said, nah, but I'm open to all thoughts. I'm open to all thoughts. I love my social, but I also love Chiefs.com too. So
nice. Fan-generated content will overtake professionally produced content at some point in the future.
I think that it's going to give it a run for its money. UGC, that user-generated content for us, is awesome. And by the way, people are doing a better job day in and day out than you and I can do. And they're doing it with a lot less, and they're doing it a lot more nimbly. Not a disagreement, but I'm going to put up a fight. It's still in that case. My mortgage depends on the fight. My mortgage depends on it.
Yeah, that's right. Mortgage might depend on this one too. AI will take the content creator's job.
Now, gosh, AI, it scares the crap out of me. It scares the crap out of me. I can't believe what it can do and what it's doing. I sure hope the case is no. But man, oh man, like the jury is out. I am still in awe that this might have been, since the advent of the internet publicly, this is about the most like flabbergasting thing I've seen.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think we know the answer to that really yet, but I think we'll find out in time. Last one, and we did talk about it, but sports fly on the wall documentaries, your All or Nothings, your Drive to Survives, the franchise. Is that the next leap in sports media, leaving the rest of the stuff behind?
See, I love it. I love it because it's reality show without the sticky grossness, right? Like, I love, first of all, there's no better reality show than sports, but to be able to, an F1 top 3 best documentaries I've ever seen. I mean, as far as like that live reality, like unbelievable. Hard Knocks, All or Nothings, all of those. I mean, I can't even. Sunderland Till I Die was the one show that blew me away. I don't know if anybody's seen it, but it literally changed the way that I wanted to produce. Right? It's like, hey, here's an amazing show on a crappy team. That is a great testimony to really, really good storytelling and no fear storytelling. But so, yes, I do believe that there is some amazing things coming out. As a matter of fact, in probably July-ish, early summer, we have one that we're working on with Netflix called Quarterback, and Patrick Mahomes is the star. There's been some trailers out and some fun stuff, but people are going to just eat this stuff alive. It's great.
Mate, you handled all those. You handled my curveball, my fastball. You sorted me out there. My screwball. Nicely played, Rob. Well done.
I'm still rattled from the AI question a little bit. I might have to have a beer after we're done. I'm a little rattled on it.
If I read one more article about AI and what else, it's what other part of my job it's going to take. I'm going to need something stronger than a beer, Rob. Anyway, mate, that brings us to the end. Rob, thanks for being so open about, the inside workings of what it's like to be in production at an NFL team, a very successful one. The process, how you make decisions, where ideas come from. It's fantastic to see, and the proof's in the pudding with this stuff. It's such a public job. And because it's all your work's out in the open to scrutiny, and willing to plow on and create more cool stuff over and over again. Testament. So well done, awesome journey, and I'd love to catch up again soon in person. We'll get down to get over to Kansas City at some point, mate, or we'll have you here in Australia as well.
Well, you guys are family. Thanks for everything. Honored to be on it. Hopefully, somebody walks away with 3 or 4 good nuggets from this thing. But I'll be listening to the remaining podcasts as well. And appreciate you guys. Come on to KC and hang out.
Sounds good. Thanks, Rob. Catch you later.
You bet. Take care.